Welcome to the Mindset Mile podcast, the show that'll leave you empowered to take action towards becoming the turned up version of your already awesome self. I'm your host, Aisha Zaza, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Hey friend, you've heard me talk a lot about affirmations on the podcast and how much power our words and thoughts have over how we operate. For as simple as saying daily affirmations is, I know it can feel like you're not sure what to say, or you keep wanting to start the habit, but you haven't gotten to it yet. Which is why I'm so grateful this episode is sponsored by Self-Pause, a positive affirmation and visualization app that has thousands of inspiring, professionally recorded affirmations. I love having an app that takes the guesswork out of what to say, and all of the affirmations are always what I need to hear. There are lots of great categories to choose from to fit your personal goals and aspirations, like self-love, confidence, body appreciation, financial growth, stress, basically everything we talk about on this show and more. I've made it a habit to start my morning listening to a recording, and it's helped my mindset so much. Regularly practicing mindfulness is essential for personal growth, so whether you're a manifestation beginner or expert, Self-Pause app is for you. Download the app by going to Self-Pause, that's selfpause.com/mindset mile. That's selfpause.com/mindset mile to start using guided positive affirmations straight from your phone. I'm asked all the time about nutrition, and though I don't have a formal background on the subject, it is something I'm passionate about and I'm constantly taking initiative to learn more about and apply in my own life. I know that when it comes to food and nutrition, information can get easily overwhelming, so I knew I wanted to have a meaningful conversation with someone who could explain the direction I think so many want to go with their nutrition but don't know the way. When I thought who would be a wealth of information on the topic, I looked no further than Jenny Blake. Jenny is a licensed nutritionist who helps ladies who lift change their body composition by being well-fed and properly fueled. As a lifelong athlete, a background in competitive CrossFit, a nationally qualified bikini competitor, and one who's always learning, Jenny has mastered the strategies of nutrition to build muscle, decrease body fat, and gain optimal health. She's helped hundreds of ladies build their shape, understand the nutrition strategy, and create a nutrition routine to serve them long-term in her program, Create Your Shape. We talked about what exactly macros are, what they mean in terms of properly fueling your body to perform at its best and to get in the shape you desire. But even more importantly, we discussed how learning about nutrition in this way can help you take your control back with food and not be led by emotional and stress eating. I think you're really going to find this episode super helpful in your continued journey to your best self and health. So without further ado, let's get to the interview. Hey fam, welcome back to the Mindset Mile podcast. I am so excited because today we are doing our first interview with good friend Jenny Blake. Jenny is a licensed nutritionist, and she and I actually met in San Diego when she was living there for a brief stint at an adult gymnastics class.
I think that is the best intro I've received yet. Yeah, we met at a gymnastics class, and we were just tumbling and flipping around, and a friend of a friend, I think, brought you.
Yeah, I was down visiting, and yeah, she's like, do you want to go to a gymnastics class with me? I was like, absolutely I do.
Of course I do. Why wouldn't I? Yeah, so that's how we met, and then we've just stayed in contact since then. And
yeah, all on Instagram, because now you're just traveling around. How long were you in San Diego?
So I did actually live in San Diego for about 4 years. And then that's when from there, we decided, we have our online business. We can go anywhere in the world. Nothing's holding us down. Let's just go. And so since then, we've been traveling full time. So that was 3 years ago. So I actually met you right before we left.
Okay, I didn't realize that was home base because I've watched you since then travel around and take your business with you everywhere, which I think is just the coolest thing ever. You have such an adventurous, fun life that I think everyone can get a little inspiration from. So very cool. And I always love a gal that is, as an adult, you're like, how do I meet people? Like what a great opportunity and great way to connect with people that are like adventurous and like-minded. And so I just love that we met at an adult gymnastics class.
Yeah. And somebody asked me this the other day, like, how do you meet people as you travel around? Because normally we're in one place for, 3 to 6 months. And, typically it's like, oh, it's hard to meet people. But at the same time, you'd be surprised how many people are into going to adult gymnastics classes, right? Mm-hmm. Or I just signed up for improv acting classes, which I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm like, well, I'm going to go and I'm sure I'll meet people there, right? Or different gyms, like CrossFit gyms are so easy to meet people, or different, communities or events, or all it takes is knowing one person and then it just opens the door. So it's actually pretty easy to meet people by just doing things that you want to do.
I love that. Yeah. And you live that through and through. That is clear. So we could all use a little bit more of that in our lives. That spontaneity. That's so cool. Okay. So I'm super excited to chat with you, Jenny. You are such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to nutrition. And I love everything that you share. And granted, I mean, you started your podcast not too long ago, but before then it was mostly just like on Instagram that I've, become very familiar with how you teach macros in, with your clients and how to make that a lifestyle. And so I am just super excited to have this conversation today because I know food and diet can be such a touchy subject, as I think we're all realizing as a society that this has been like a very toxic space. Yes. But how do we learn the tools to fuel our body and, all that stuff? So let's just say someone is a complete newbie to macros. How do we explain what you do with them?
Yeah. So if you're a complete newbie to macros, I think the first thing is just understanding what are macros, right? What is that in the first place? And I like to describe it as it's something that it's a way for you to understand food. I mean, it's not another diet or another like point system or another like layer that's been put on food. It really is just describing food. So I actually think whether you're, going to be tracking your macros down to the gram or not, I think it's important for everybody to just understand food in this context. So how do you do that, right? So most people are familiar with calories. You burn a certain amount of calories throughout the day. And for most ladies who are working out in some capacity, it's a lot more than we think. It's generally 2,000 calories or more, right? So you know that you're burning that much per day. And so just like a car, if your car is burning a certain amount of fuel, you have to give your car enough fuel for it to operate. Same thing with your body. You have to be eating enough and giving your body those nutrients. So if you think of it like gas for your car, it's like calories, right? So you have to have enough calories in your body for your body to operate at an optimal level. And so calories are in the form of food. So all food has a certain amount of calories that is energy. So now that we have that context laid out, we can double click down and get even a little bit more specific because we could say, hey, you're burning 2,000 calories a day. So you want to make sure you're eating 2,000 calories a day. And obviously, there's a time and place where that would be higher and lower, but that's kind of getting into the weeds. But you could eat 2,000 calories in Skittles, and that's probably not going to be the best for your, physique and health goals. And so by double clicking down on calories, you can say, okay, what are calories made up of? You can classify 3 different types of calories, and that's going to be your macros. And most people know them more than they think because the 3 macros are your protein, carbs, and then fats, which most people are familiar with. Okay, protein, I know that meat and fish. Okay, carbs, rice, potatoes, quinoa. Okay, fats, olive oil, mixed nuts, right? So most people are more familiar than they think, but it's just really putting the description and the categories to those foods. So once you understand that, oh, okay, I can get even more specific to know how much different macros, how much protein, carbs, and fat are in these different foods, then it's really just knowing, okay, what does my body need, not only in terms of calories, but specifically macros, and then what's in these foods, and then pairing them together. So that's kind of the very foundation of macros and kind of how I start to teach it. And then of course, there's so many different ways that we can go from there to be even more specific or more detailed or explain it even further.
Yeah. So there's so much to like unpack, and I'm like so excited. I don't even know where to start, but I guess I want to start by asking, like, in this age of deciphering, different diets and ways to eat, and there's keto and Whole30 and this program and that program, how does knowing what someone's personalized macros, how does that empower them to make it a lifestyle instead of something that's just like, okay, I want to learn how to do this for 30 days and then where do I go from there?
Oh, I love this question. I actually have in my program a specific week where we just cover comparing different diets so people can understand. So we need to be empowered with this, right? And so we don't just think, oh, I just need to do this diet because I have a couple of friends doing it, right? But really understanding it. And so it goes back to understanding your body and understanding food. So if you think about any diet, it really is just a generic way to represent macros. So which macros is just understanding food. So perfect example would be the keto diet. Keto diet is, if you look at it in terms of macros, which that's what it's trying to achieve, it's saying, let's keep your carbs really, really low, like below 30 to 50 grams low. Let's get majority of your calories from fat and then have moderate protein. So really it is just a way to represent macros, but because people can think that macros is complicated, it is a way to remove the complexity of it and just say, hey, don't have any carbs. And that's really easy for people to follow because it's just saying, hey, don't have any carbs. And you're like, okay, great. But the issue with that, and why that may work in the short term, the issue with it is I found when we're not empowered to understand how it works and to make decisions, then it really just becomes a short-term effort that we're doing for a little bit, and then we go back to what we were doing before. Versus if we just understand food, right, in terms of knowing how many calories in breaking it out to the specific macros I need, and how does that pair up with different foods, then it's just saying, oh, okay, I know what my body needs to fuel my body versus doing this short-term restrictive effort and then going back to what I was doing before. So that's how it really, I just can't emphasize enough that it's just understanding food versus putting a layer on top of it so that way it's easier to follow.
Yeah. The first time I ever tracked macros, it was a few years back, and it didn't even take me that long to follow okay, I need to get this many grams of protein, this many grams of fat, this many grams of carbs, in a day. I was shocked at how imbalanced I was eating prior to that. I was not getting nearly enough protein. I was probably way over eating carbs. Fats, I'm not sure, maybe was sort of on. But I feel like it really does give you a better understanding of you can make anything work within macros. I love that this is not okay, we're going to eliminate everything that you love and then hopefully you can maintain this for your lifetime. It's not like that. You can make cheese or sweets or wine or anything work as long as it fits. It's like a puzzle, and I found that to be so empowering because it didn't take me long before I could kind of eyeball, I was like, okay, well, I know in general, I need to be eating about this much protein now. And it was a pretty big difference from how I was eating prior to that. So I do think that this is the best education that someone can have, in terms of getting to know what fuels their body and how food does not need to control you. And
yes.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's not just okay, I either eat clean or I don't eat or I eat crap, right? And so it kind of removes that and has you really focus on quantity over being so perfect with quality. And quality still is important. And when you have macros, it still does force you to eat, quality food, but it gives you a little bit more flexibility where instead of thinking okay, I'm good if I have, vegetables and I'm bad if I have crackers.
Yeah.
It more so thinks, oh, okay, how, like, let's look at this in terms of quantity of food and how much fuel I need. And then let's also consider the quality of it and looking at the ingredients. So it definitely allows you to be more flexibility or to have more flexibility. The other thing is I kind of think of macros because I'm sure people are thinking right now who are listening, like, okay, but that seems really tedious. It seems like a lot of work. I've got to memorize every food or do a math problem before I eat. And I want to share that I think of macros in kind of 3 different phases. So there's the first phase where it does take more effort at first before something's going to be effortless. And so there is the effort phase where you are learning and you are figuring it out. But I will say, once you start understanding it, a lot of food, you can categorize foods. So for example, and this is something that I really teach, is if you took any carb that comes from the ground, so your potatoes, your couscous, your quinoa, your rice, sweet potatoes, all of those, and you have a half a cup of that. Or if you even just think about your hand, a handful of any of those that are cooked, that's going to be about 25 grams of carbs.
So I love that. Yeah, a visual.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then if you know that, okay, well, I need, and I'm just making this number up, if I need 150 grams of carbs per day, and let's say if I divide that by how many meals I'm having, let's say that I need 50 grams of carbs at my lunch, then I know that a half a cup or one handful of any carb that I choose is going to be about 25 grams. Then I know I need 2 of those. So 2 handfuls every day at lunch. So then you're less reliant on an app or using a food scale, even though those are important to be more accurate or to help you visualize this, but it allows you to be so much more empowered with understanding food to be like, oh, okay, well, lunch today, I know I need 2 handfuls of any carb, right? So even if you're going out to eat, right, you can still make that decision and be fairly close to your macros because you understand how food is categorized, right? And you just understand food at a deeper level. So that's just one example. And that's really phase 1 of like understanding food, right? And putting in the effort to understand food and categorizing food. The second phase is making it tracking really efficient. So once you learn food, right, and you learn how to track, then you can start setting up the systems for it to be a little bit more systemized instead of taking so much effort, right? And start really thinking about, okay, how can I use the app to just copy and paste meals over, right? Like it takes me maybe 2 minutes a day to track my food because I'm copying things over or I just know how to navigate the app. But even if I'm not in the app, right, I'm using my hands, right? Or I have a planning process where I know how to hit my targets and it becomes really efficient. And so that's where it's so easy that you can consistently stay on track. And when you consistently stay on track, that's when you make progress. So that's phase 2. And then phase 3 is when you understand food so much that you can start distancing yourself from tracking and from weighing food because you just understand macros in food at a deeper level that you cannot track for a whole day and still be really directional based on those systems that you've set up in your understanding of food. And so that's definitely where I'm at now. And it's so empowering because I don't feel like I need to track for the rest of my life. I definitely still track when I have specific goals. I think it helps me be more accurate, but in my day-to-day, I think there's periods of life where I'm focused, on making progress a little bit more specific and same with my ladies. And sometimes when I'm not, and I think getting to that place is so empowering. And that's really kind of like the full cycle where I have ladies now who have been working with me for a while and they're in that phase and we're letting go of the app. So that's kind of long-winded way, but hopefully you guys understand now how this can kind of work for you and not something that you have to do for a little bit and then go back to what you're doing before.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was listening to your podcast the other day, and you had mentioned how so many women come to you asking the wrong questions. And I love how you shifted the focus on what people should really be asking and what they should be thinking about in terms of food. Can you share what some of those wrong questions are and enlighten us on what the focus should be?
Yeah. And I want to first start off saying wrong question kind of sounds negative, even though that's exactly what I said. But we've never been taught nutrition, right? Like we don't even know what questions to ask because we've never been taught this. And so going back to like being educated when it comes to nutrition is just so powerful. And then it starts you down the path to getting the right answers, right? Versus getting good answers to a quote, wrong question. So a lot of times I get asked, well, is this food good or bad? Right? Or should I have this food or that food? Or should I do this diet or that diet for 2 weeks? And so those are a lot of questions that I get asked. And when I get asked that, I can tell that they are coming at it from a good place of like, oh, I want to know, I'm trying to be better. But I really encourage them to back up and really think about it differently. So first, instead of doing a diet for a short amount of time, really most of my ladies, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast, want to change their body composition. They don't want to just have the scale go down for a couple of days and then it go back up. They truly want to build muscle and decrease body fat. And so if you're going to build muscle, or you can build muscle, you can build, depending on where you're at, a pound to maybe a couple pounds per month, and then decrease about a half a pound of true body fat per week. And so that takes time, right? So you really want something for at least a couple of months to really change your shape and not just temporarily decrease the scale. Because if you go all out on a diet or you eat super clean, you're going to decrease inflammation and you're going to decrease water retention in your body. So on the scale, it's going to look like, oh, I'm dropping a bunch of weight. But in the short term, you're really not dropping a lot of body fat during that time. And then if you're so focused on restricting yourself, you're not eating enough to actually put on muscle. So really stepping back from the short-term efforts and looking at what I call a nutrition strategy. And so that's looking at a game plan that's mapped out over months. Typically around 4 months, I think is a good nutrition strategy where there are specific time periods where you have different efforts and different focuses, but really you're giving yourself enough time to create the change that you're looking to change. So that's the first one. And then in terms of like, is this food good or is this food bad or should I eat this food or that food? I think it's really taking it back to, okay, well, what's the number one focus? And that really comes down to fueling that car. Am I getting enough fuel into that car to support my metabolism? So my metabolism's kicking. So AKA, am I getting enough nutrients in my body to make sure my metabolism is working at a high speed? And then second, to able to like have a fully functioning internal body, right? Where your hormones, your thyroid, like all the things that go on under the hood per se. And then lastly is you need enough nutrients to actually build muscle. So that really comes back to focusing on quantity over quality of food. So that would be like number one. If we had like a hierarchy chart, that would be like top of the totem pole of the main focus. So then you have to think of, okay, well, is this food good or bad? Well, in what context, right? Because if the goal is to focus on the amount of food that I really need, well, somebody who may need a lot of food or a lot of carbs, that food may be a great option for them because they're trying to eat more. For somebody who maybe has a lower amount of carbs, that food may not be the best because then they'll go over their carb allotment for the day. So it really depends on the context. And so that's in terms of quantity and the amount of food, but then we can also look at quality of food because that still is important, and how much of this food is processed and how processed is it? Because you can have crackers, right, that just have maybe a little bit of the nutrients removed and maybe no sugar added, but then you can also have, candy bars that are just pure sugar and milk. So that's kind of the next context that I would look at after looking at the quantity in your specific goals. Then I would look at, okay, let's look at the quality of this food, and then also in relation to your specific goals too. So that's a lot of information. So let me
No,
stop and see if you have questions
I
on
think
that.
that's so, everything that I'm like hanging on every word because I think so much of this is really helpful information. And like you said a while back, we're not educated on nutrition in school. You know, like if it is, it's maybe like what, just like the basic understanding of like, I mean,
The food pyramid.
yeah, the food pyramid, which is like, so hello, like 1987 called and wanted their, their diagram back.
Yes.
We know so much more now, like as an everyday consumer, but like once you start to learn a little bit about it, you realize how much you don't know. And I think that that's where it becomes overwhelming for people, and that's why I think this information is just like so helpful because what are the things that people should consider if they want to change their relationship with food or change their body composition? It doesn't always have to be about how you look, but let's be real. Like everyone wants to look and feel good. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I think doing it in a way that is sustainable and that probably rewires some thoughts that you have around food and how it might like control you is the most like I'm taking a lot of that away from the education that you're giving. So I don't think it's too much, but I do want to ask you this. So many food habits that people have are psychological. What is some advice that you give to your clients or to the person who like stress eats or eats emotionally?
Yeah. So kind of taking this question and also building off what you just last said, you don't have to do macros to see success, right? It is a tool. There are other foundational principles that are beneficial to have in place first that then make macros so much easier to build off of, like on top of those foundational principles. And so I think a lot of times people can be like, oh my gosh, I've got to, hit these macros. And then maybe they get stressed out, whether trying to hit the macros or stressed out because of work, or they had gotten a fight with their partner, right? Or family or friend stuff going on. And so that can lead to what maybe is emotional eating, right? Or maybe they think, oh, I'll never get to where I want to be, or I had a bad workout, right? Something that triggers an emotion that then creates the action of being comforted with food. And so I think it's important to see that our actions are driven from an emotion that we have, which that's why it's called emotional eating, right? Because the emotion that we have drives us to the pantry or to, the fridge, because we do get temporary like satisfaction from that food. And so just kind of bringing awareness to, okay, that's what's happening. Well, then what is driving my emotion, or what can I do with that emotion? And so our emotions are driven by our thoughts. And so a lot of times, especially for my ladies, they're very like, type A, very go-getters, and they're fast, they're quick. And so they might not even realize that they're having a thought, and they just immediately feel the emotion and take quick action from that. And so really slowing down to observe what's going on in our brain and our thoughts to see, okay, what's going on? Like, what am I thinking that's driving this emotion of maybe it's stress, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's overwhelm, that then is driving the action of going to the pantry. And so when you have, it just brings so much awareness to what your thoughts are. And then you can start questioning them, because someone might have taking care of a handful of kids, and then they're also a full-time, working full-time, and they've got a lot on their plate, and they're constantly thinking like, I've got too much going on, it's overwhelming, and that's their emotion. Where somebody else could have the exact same scenario, and they could be thinking, man, I am such a boss. Like, I've got this down. I am like, I had a call with one of my clients earlier this morning, and she has 3 kids and a newborn. And she is, and I don't even require hitting your macros perfect every day. And she hits them perfect every day, like no questions asked. And she's like, yeah, we got this. It's easy, right? Mm-hmm. Where other people may not be the case. And so getting to her thoughts, right, are just going to be different from that other person's thoughts. And knowing that you have control over those thoughts. Well, is it even true that I have got so much going on? Or can I change that to, oh, I actually have so much going on and I'm handling it really well.
Yes.
Right. And just really questioning the default thoughts that we're having, because that'll then change your emotion that then changes the action. Now, I will say that can be difficult to do, but that's why I journal every single morning to get that out, right? And then from there, realizing even if I can't in the moment change that thought, I can sit with it feeling. If I'm stressed, like it's not going to kill me to be stressed, right? It's just an emotion.
Yeah.
And like we can handle any emotion, and we don't have to act on them. So that's the next thing when it comes to emotional eating. So those would be the two things that I would suggest. And it really kind of takes you away from anything to do with food and kind of leaning into what's going on internally, because that's really going to be the driver.
Everything that you just said is like my podcast summed up. I absolutely love that. Just being aware of your thoughts it's half the battle. You know, I just actually recorded an episode about how to get unstuck. And it's like in life, you know, with wherever you're at. And it's like, are you stuck though? Or are you just giving this feeling an identity? And you have to call it something, you know, like, why are you calling it stuck? Like, just if we can rename, you know, or rethink the lens in which we are viewing our life and our situations, so much can be different about them. So that was so helpful to have that point reiterated, and especially with like eating and food habits, because, you know, I think that people don't want to be reactive, you know, to their emotions with food, but it's like, well, how do you become how do you undo all that and all those layers? And I think it's just the first step is literally like becoming aware.
Yes. And then like exactly what you said, what are you making it mean? Right? Like literally the other day I was thinking about how stressed I was. And then I was like, that's a problem. I shouldn't be stressed. It's a problem. And then I realized, oh no, stress is just an emotion. This actually isn't a problem. It actually means my business is growing, right? It's actually a good thing. And so it's so empowering. And too, you probably, I talked about this, I coached about this the other day too. And I know you relate to this. It's kind of like when we go and we work out, right? And we're squatting and it's painful, like it's physically painful, but we associate that pain with like, oh, I'm getting so strong. Ooh, I'm like such a badass. I'm so powerful, right? Whereas other people go and they work out, right? They associate that pain with something that's terrible, right? And so it's almost like, and same thing with other things that I do, right? Like writing emails, that's painful for me, but other people are great at it, right? But I can reframe it in my brain to mean something else. And that's going to affect how I feel about it and therefore the actions I take.
This is like therapy session. I love it. I could talk about this stuff all day. You are so awesome, Jenny. Thank you so much for addressing all that. And especially the fact that we get scared of negative emotions. And I talk about this a lot too, and how we want to like push them aside as fast as possible, right? Because it doesn't feel good to have like a negative emotion. But at the end of the day, if you can just realize it's literally just a vibration in your body, right? It's nothing is actually happening besides a feeling. And yeah, like you said, we can handle any feeling. It's not going to kill us. So yeah, if you can just like sit with it, and instead of trying to like always avoid it, just be with it for a minute. You know, it's going to pass. It's going to pass. So anyways,
100%. So good. We could probably go on.
I know. I'm like, I hope this wasn't too big of a tangent, but I think this is really the stuff that people need to hear. So I want to ask you a question, because I actually get asked this pretty frequently, not even having like a formal background with nutrition, but people want to know about like timing. What about like, what would you tell people in terms of that maybe are lifting or they're going on long distance runs, or when, you know, when they're incorporating nutrition around their workouts and around the clock? Can you share with us like what is best to be eating when?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I can answer this question in a way that shows you too, like how much knowledge you already have, instead of just saying, oh, you want to have a banana before you work out, right? Like people have probably heard that before. And okay, great. That's a good one-off tip, but why do I want to have that? And then what if I don't have a banana? Or what if I don't like bananas, right? Or what if I want to change it up, you know, in a couple of months? So I'd love to answer this to give you the framework of like the bigger picture, and then so that way you can understand it and you guys can make the decision for what you want. So when it comes to your workout, ideally you are stacking your carbs around your workout. So now that you guys know what carbs are, right, you want to stack them around your workout. And why do you want to do this? So when you are working out, your body utilizes glycogen from your muscle as fuel. Well, glycogen is really just stored carbs. So when you think about it that way, you're like, okay, if I want to have a really good workout, I want to make sure my glycogen storages are full. So that way I can push harder in my workout and have more energy in my workout. So that's why you want to get carbs in before your workout. And then you want to get carbs in after your workout because you want to replenish those glycogen storages in your muscle. And you're in a great place then to use that fuel to recover from that workout too, and to build those muscles and repair those muscles. So that's why you want to have carbs, and you can start thinking through like how it actually works in your body when you're working out and when you're recovering. But then what does that look like, right? How do I actually apply that? And so carbs are going to be your rice, your quinoa, your potatoes, your oatmeal. Those are really like your whole sources of carbs. But then there's also things that are like quicker digesting, like pretzels or toast or crackers, that are also a source of carbs. And so about 90 minutes to 2 hours before your workout is when you'll want to get those carbs in, so that way it can go through your digestive system and get absorbed and get stored as muscle glycogen. So then 1, you don't have food sitting in your stomach when you're trying to work out, but then 2, you have that fuel in your muscles that's like ready to go. Then afterwards, you want to get carbs in within 90 minutes to 2 hours after your workout for the same reason. So that way it gets into your digestive system and gets absorbed and helps to recover those muscles and then like replenish your glycogen storages. So then that's kind of the application of it. So then let's get specific and give a couple of examples. So let's say you work out, you do a 4 p.m. class, or after work, maybe at 5 p.m., you go on a run. So you'd think, okay, what is about 90 minutes to 2 hours before that? And most people are probably working then. Mm-hmm. And so it may not be their lunch break. So it may be between that 2 to 3 p.m. time period. So they might be able to have like a full meal, right? So it may be like a snack option. So what's a good snack option? So they have these to-go oatmeal containers that you can get at the store that you just put water in, either put in the microwave or some boiling water. And that's a great option, right? And you can pair that with some other protein or other like hard-boiled eggs or other fruit to just add some more flavor to it too. So that might be a great option. Or let's say like I've done, sweet potatoes before. That's another good option. Or I've done pretzels before if I'm, I need something that's quicker, or I'm on, in my car and I don't have, anything to, actually sit down and eat. But I think the point is you get to choose what that looks like, right? So what type of carbs do you like? And then what's going to work with your specific scenario at that time? Mm-hmm. And then afterwards, okay, so then you do your workout, and then at 5, and then within 2 hours, right, you're going to be having dinner, right? So you'll just want to make sure you get carbs in with that dinner. So you have your, maybe you're having steak for dinner, and then you're going to have red potatoes with that, and then green beans, right? So you're going to get those carbs in then. So that's kind of taking you from the framework to the like knowledge, and then the actual application and examples. But do you have any questions on that?
Where does, I think people, their protein questions are, like, when do I have my protein around my workouts? Because I love that. I love like the carb, but I was actually, I love that was the focus. But I was actually thinking, like you see people with their protein shakes after their workout, like how important is that to get before or after in addition to carbs?
Yeah. So I think that it is important as well, but I also don't want to overwhelm everybody because I could go on and on, like right. All the details of this. But I would say actually carbs is probably more important because of those reasons. But at the same time, it's really easy to get a protein shake in immediately post-workout. So I do think that should be part of the routine too. And that would be like, runner up, but it's very easy to do. So I would just make it part of your standard routine. Ideally, you're getting it in within 30 minutes. I generally just have it like as I'm leaving the gym or as I'm like wrapping up, that's when I'll start drinking the protein shake. So that's a good question. Yeah. And then since we're talking about all the macros, I'll go ahead and talk about fats too. So because fats are slower digesting, we actually want them the opposite time of carbs, because we don't want something that's slow digesting, right? And then we go to work out and it's still in our stomach, right? We want to get those carbs in and get them stored. So generally our fats are going to be lower before workouts, and then same thing after workouts. We want the protein and we want the carbs to get in and get to their muscles. And so we don't want them being slowed down by additional fat. So you don't have to be perfect with this, because I know some people are like, wait, I was good with the carbs and now the protein, but now fats, it's just getting complicated. And it definitely is. So that's why I say start with your calories, right? Then add macros. And then once you've got that down, then add nutrient timing, because those two are going to be more important first. And then add your nutrient timing in, and then start with carbs, right? And then typically getting the protein shake in is really easy. So start with those two. And then once you're really comfortable with that, then you could start adjusting the fats.
Yes, I think layering anything, with a new diet or a new lifestyle or a new habit, I think where people get overwhelmed is that they try to perfect too many things at once, and an overwhelmed mind shuts down. And so that is such a great point, that it doesn't need to be everything all at once. Just get used to getting in the habit of one thing until that becomes seamless, right? And then you can layer these other things.
Exactly. I call it mindless, but seamless, exact same thing. So that way it's just who you are and what you do. That's when you know you've got it. Yeah. And like you said, seamless, it's mindless, it's on autopilot, right? You don't even have to think about it. It's not extra effort. One thing at a time, right? And then layer in the next thing, because the long game is where you really make the changes. So you might as well have your plan and your process set up to serve you for the long term.
Mm-hmm. That's so awesome. That's actually going to fit perfectly into my last question that I have for you. And I think we've sort of addressed this in just a lot of the conversation we've had today, but I have to ask, like, what I think everyone wants to know is, how does someone apply what they know now about macros and what best fuels their body into like their lifestyle forever, right? Like eating out on the weekends or going on vacation for a week and they don't track macros like at all. Like, what is your advice for someone that's like, I just want to like live my life, but I also want this to be a part of it, but I don't want to be balled and chained to it. How do you incorporate this? And what comforting advice do you have? Like for someone to not feel like they just fell off the wagon entirely because they went to Hawaii for a week and, had Mai Tais and wings or whatever, like getting back into their lifestyle. How do they work this into it?
Yeah, I think it's so doable and so much easier than people think. And it is so much simpler than people think because of a lot of things that we've talked about, right? Where when you just understand food and you understand the portions of food, well, I can go to Hawaii and have go out to eat and have wings because, hey, I need protein with my dinner anyway. And I can have French fries because, I need carbs with my dinner anyway, right? Sure, it may not be the highest quality of food, but going back to, okay, but quantity and quality are important, but let's focus on quantity a little bit more than that quality. And so I think it goes back to the knowledge, right, of understanding food and using things like your hands to guesstimate and measure. And then also knowing that you are your average, right? You are going to be physically, if you take your past X amount of weeks or months or years, and you divided that by how many days, like if you had to rank each day and then divide it by how many days, your physique is going to represent that average. So if you go to, if you're on track with your plan for a month and then you go to Hawaii for a weekend, because you have some processed foods, right, or more alcohol than normal, going back to what I talked about earlier, you're temporarily going to be a little fluffier. The scale's going to go up in the short term because of higher inflammation and higher water retention. But that doesn't mean you've actually put on a bunch of body fat. Like it'd be very hard to put on so much body fat in just like a short period of time. But people see that they're like, oh, I made a bad decision. I had bad food. The scale's up. I'm feeling fluffy. I'm getting fatter. When really in the short term, that's probably not what's happening. And as soon as you get home, once you get back to your routine, that's going to flush through within 2 to 4 days and you'll be right back to where you were. So kind of giving some like, it's like, oh, okay, I don't have to be so perfect and I can have this little like, is it blimp in the radar?
Yeah.
Blimp in the radar.
Fluctuation, in how strict you are with your diet for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just kind of opens up the door for it's like, oh yeah, I can go out to eat. I can travel. I can have some flexibility. It's all about like what my average is and what's kind of the overarching strategy that I'm implementing. And then I think the other thing that you kind of mentioned within that is like, okay, well, how do I get back on track once I do have a weekend like that? And I think it's going to the low hanging fruit and kind of what I talked about earlier, where I have my ladies do like foundational guidelines before we even get into tracking. We like set them up to be really prepared to build on that and add tracking. But even if they weren't tracking, it's so beneficial to have these like foundational guidelines in place where the number one thing I do is like, let's create your daily feeding structure. So you don't need to eat at 7 a.m. every single day, but like what does it look like day to day? Do I have breakfast, lunch, snack, dinner? Right? Like what works for your schedule? Or maybe it's just breakfast, lunch, dinner. And that is what you repeat every single day, because then you're consistently giving your body the same amount of food every day. And then you can plan for that too. Like you can write your grocery list based off of that. Oh, I know I'm going to have a snack each day. So what snack is that going to be? And then from there, I have concepts like create your plate, where at each meal, I know that, okay, I'm going to get a protein, carb, and vegetable at each meal. So then not only can I plan for that, but that's a really easy way to get back on track and make decisions. Let's say it's Monday, right? Get back from vacation. I'm back into the swing of things. Well, I know I'm going to have breakfast and I know I'm going to have a protein, carb, and vegetable. And I don't even have to track or be overwhelmed by any of that. These are just like the low hanging fruit, the foundational pieces that I can easily just slide back into. Okay, well then after a couple of days of that, then I can build off of that when I'm, back in the swing of things.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Jenny. Is there anything else? Like, is there a question that you just never get asked or that you think about often that you just want to give for our listeners to just help them in their journey in health and fitness?
Really, I think the biggest thing is having people realize that it can be so much simpler than we think, right? I think a lot of times because we haven't been taught this and because our society really isn't set up for us to be healthy, right? And so we're kind of going against the grain too, but it can be so easy once you understand it, and understanding it doesn't require you to like go get your license like I did, right? Like you can categorize foods. You can think about like a strategy in a high level framework versus getting into the weeds of like, oh, this vegetable is bad. This one's good. That is, bad food and I shouldn't have this. I'm on or I'm off of a diet. And really just making it who you are through having the knowledge, having a strategy, and then having a routine, like a nutrition routine that just runs on autopilot. So that would be the biggest thing I would say.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Jenny. Where can everyone find you? Tell us your Instagram, your website. How do they work with you if they want to give us the deets?
Yeah. So my program, I work with ladies who lift in some capacity, whether it's just dumbbells at home or they're doing, CrossFit or at a Globo gym. And I have a program called Create Your Shape. It is 4 months and we build muscle, decrease body fat, understand how food in your body works, and create your nutrition routine that runs on autopilot. So that's my program. And I actually have a program launching soon that starts in middle of March. And you can learn more and apply and schedule your consultation call with me at jennythenutritionist.com/create-your-shape. And then if you want to follow along, I'm on Instagram as Jenny the Nutritionist. And then, like you mentioned, I have a podcast, and that is called Create Your Shape with Jenny the Nutritionist. So all very similar names. So
yeah,
so you can follow along.
Go find Jenny. Honestly, you're always providing so much value through your Instagram stories and just by way of living, this backwards and forwards, and it's very clear that this is just who you are. And I love that that's what you empower other women to do too. So definitely go give Jenny a follow. Thank you so much, Jenny, for all of the information that you gave to us today. I hope that it serves many. And if you loved this episode, please be sure to share it on your Instagram and tag me at Aisha Zaza and send it to a friend that might need this information, because this is powerful stuff. So I can't wait to see you again next week. Thank you so much. And until then, make it a great day.